Today's dedication is for Zahn, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Wildsear Scouring Maw versus Grismold, Chatterfang, and a Nycthea. No ramp in the opening hand. Yeah, I think we do want to be getting into ramp really, so worth a free mulligan. Alright, decided to keep this one because we have the Grafted Growth, can look at the top cards with Mirri's Guile as well and reorganise them. Get to shuffle them away if we don't like them either, thanks to having a couple of fetches. Drawing to Commercial District, we'll maybe try and do that next turn, we'll see. We'll just go for a Tiger here into the Mirri's Guile. And Bojuka Bog just pointing it at himself, there is a fetch to exile over here. Skull Clamp on turn 1 for Grismold, so plenty of time to blow that up before they can make use of it. No need to throw out a Skull Clamp this early as far as I'm aware. Alright, I think we'd rather get into the lands. I don't mind Anax either, or the Kenrith's Transformation. If we manage to get into our commander at some point, we could go Anax, and that will cascade into this, but yeah, we'll take the land for now, I think. So Kenrith's Anax land, and we have to choose between the Destiny Spinner and the Springheart Nantuko. I think we'll go for the Nantuko, start to get some chump blockers into play early on. Farseek for a Nycthea. More ramping Golgari's Signet, this time for Chatterfang. Cryptolith Rite will ramp our opponent once he's got some non-summoning sick tokens in play. There's another land for us. Do we just shuffle this stuff away? Try and get into something bigger and flashier. Can always go Commercial District, throw something in the bin as well, but I think we want the Grafted Growth here. Let's just go for the same again, put the land on top. And if we want to go for the Grafted Growth, then we are actually going to have to shuffle away, so it can be... have to shock something in. So the land comes down, creates an insect, we'll shuffle with the Bloodstained Mire. We were able to put a couple of lands on top there, so Mirri's Guile doing some work. Shock that into play, and now it's Grafted Growth onto a basic mountain. Much less likely to see removal on the basic mountain, and it can just be a plus counter on the Nantuko. So we'll likely want to get down our commander next turn and be putting some big stuff on top with Mirri's Guile to try and cascade, and like I said before, we can fix the cascade somewhat, or at least see what's going to be cascaded into with Mirri's Guile. Heliod the Sun God, so maybe a God tribal list. Farseek from Chatterfang now as well. And there's a Swarm Yard as well in order to regenerate a squirrel in this deck. Okay, Kenrith's Transformation from the Grismold player, simply to draw a card. I think he would have put that on the Nantuko, but he put it on an insect token. Gets him into another equipment in the Basilisk collar. I'd be keeping these in hand if I was my opponent. You don't know what removal your opponents are going to play. Alright, so now we've got on top another land, so we could play an untapped land if we want to keep these on top and not shuffle away. Weaver of Harmony and a Cindervines, so getting into all of our cheap stuff. Don't particularly mind shuffling this stuff away either, to be honest, so throw the enchantments away and just draw into the land. Maybe should have drawn into the Cindervines instead, but we're guaranteeing ourselves land drops here at least. So Arid Mesa going to continue to trigger the Springheart, thanks to that not going down to the Kenrith's Transformation. So just getting out a basic mountain with that, we'll cast our commander. And then let's start spreading some damage around. We'll go 5 down the middle, and 1 to the left, and eagerly await a board wipe. The Abzan player casting a 3 blind mice, so creates a mouse token, and then creates a token of a token you control. So that'll be on level 2 and 3, and then at level 4, +1/+1 and vigilance to all his stuff. So he's just going to get an army of mice, you would assume. Just built Zinnia from the new set, and this might be a good one in it actually. Creating token copies of things, and it is a 1/1 mouse as well, so it does enable that commander. Sylvan Anthem gives a +1/+1 buff to green creatures, and whenever a green creature enters, scry 1. Then Chatterfang into play. I was worried we'd see a board wipe there, but that suggests he doesn't have one in hand. 3 cards in hand for Chatterfang. Does scry 1 from the Anthem when it enters. And now the third commander to hit play, Grismold the Dreadsower. Unfortunately don't have Skull Clamp in this deck. Throws the Skull Clamp onto the commander though. And each player gets a plant token at the end of the turn. So Chatterfang gets a squirrel as well and triggers the Anthem twice, because both of those creatures just so happen to be green. Alright, let's see here. Because we can get rid of cards off the top of the library, but we can also cascade completely past lands if we want to. Don't think we necessarily care about Rhythm of the Wild. So we can go... yeah, it doesn't really matter what order we do it in. We can get rid of Rhythm of the Wild with Commercial District. So, Rogue's Passage. Rhythm of the Wild we get rid of with the Surveil land, and we'll draw into Song of the Dryads this turn. Stacking the top of your library is good, apparently. So before we cast anything, Commercial District, and now we know that we've got the land on top. We trigger for another insect token, and yeah, hopefully won't regret throwing the haste away here. So now it can be Case of the Locked Hothouse, and triggering our commander for the first time, a Cascade on a 4-mana spell. Gets us into a Citizen Champion, that's a really good one. Hopefully be able to keep it in play. We'll be able to play an enchantment into it this turn in order to draw. And it's an entry as well, so an even better Cascade. Thought that was a cast, but it's one that triggers on entry, so a plus counter and a card draw from the Case of the Locked Hothouse. And a Creeping Renaissance is good for when all of our enchantments inevitably get blown up. So play a land for the turn, and the Spring Heart is doing some work this game. Go Destiny Spinner simply to cantrip. And that gets us into Utopia Sprawl, so get that onto the basic. And we've ramped quite nicely there. That can tap for double green and gets us into another land in the command tower. That was from the Utopia Sprawl, then the Destiny Spinner enters and we see New Horizons, even more ramp. So now we've got multiple things to swing in with. We are giving our opponent a bit of chance with Chatterfang because I didn't go for Song of the Dryads, but yeah, I think we're reasonably safe here. Let's take Wildsear into the left, and I think we'll just have to leave it at that, because it's just a bunch of chump blockers that we've got in play at the moment. Decides to take the 6 points of commander damage, and then we are round to Onyxia's turn. Only 4 cards in hand here as well. Buried Alive searches for some cards to put into... no, it's creature cards, it has to be. Entomb is any card, but Buried Alive it has to be creatures. So 3 of those from the library straight into the bin. And ended up going for Doomweight Giant. That'll be a good means of clearing up all the tokens. Heliod the Suncrowned we assume is part of a combo. Karametra, God of Harvests. So maybe, yeah, maybe it is God Tribal. Maybe Heliod is not part of a combo. Maybe they just want to get a bunch of indestructibles into play. The Squirrel player, a Transmigran Altar. So black tap, sack a creature, adds triple colourless. And then 2 tap sack makes a 3/3 zombie. Can only do that as a sorcery though, so sacrifices to it, and that will put a plus counter on the Griswold for the first time. Seems as though Griswold is going to be able to make use of this Skull Clamp after all. Chatterfang could get rid of the plant token before he does though, but I have a feeling he's not going to. A Deep Forest Hermit, so comes in with 4 squirrels and 4 additional squirrels from the Chatterfang. Did not leave up, he could have left up a single black there for his commander. Yeah, you only have to put a single black into it. You can sacrifice as many squirrels as you want, so you'd be able to respond to anything that your opponents do, or at least hold it over their heads. So, yeah, maybe has a land drop to make, I'm not sure. Not worthy that Urborg is in play over here now, Shizo as well. Gets a bunch of scry off the Anthem and all the squirrels entering. So now Chatterfang can swing in straight through us thanks to the Forest Walk. Could go in at any player actually. We've all got forests in play now, but Chatterfang hits us for commander damage. I was thinking of going for Song of the Dryads onto that commander anyway, because I'm worried about the, well, the combos for one, but the fact that it can kill off our commander quite easily. Luckily, like I said, they didn't hold up that black mana. A Rogue's Passage here as well for Griswold, so we have to watch out for that. Revel in Riches wants to see creatures die. Oh, it's creatures and opponent controls dies. So yeah, of course Griswold wants to give us a bunch of plant tokens and then kill them all off. And yeah, I completely forgot that that's the tactic of Griswold. Of course that's why he didn't get rid of the Spring Heart Nantuko previously. So it gets rid of all of our plant tokens early on, and with this in play we're not going to keep them in play, which means Griswold is going to consistently get massive. Did have to tap down the Rogue's Passage at least, but he's going to make a bunch of Revel in Riches tokens. Does he make 9 here? Yeah, I don't think he quite gets 10. 10 treasure tokens with this and you win the game at the beginning of your next upkeep. So maybe with a massive Grismold and the ability to one-shot us at this point. Maybe it has to be Song of the Dryads over here instead. We'll see where he swings in, but I suppose it doesn't really matter. There's always the risk that he one-shots us next turn, so I think we have to go after that. And hopefully one of us can draw into removal for this as well, because the commander is going to trigger again and make more treasure tokens with that, so yeah, I think that does actually put this online next turn. This assumes that he's not going to spend the treasure tokens though. Commander is currently a 15-13 with trample. Alright, does spend some of the mana at least in order to give Death Touch and Lifelink as well with the Basilisk Collar. Spends more of the mana. And it's a Toski Bearer of Secrets, which is going to draw him a card when he hits with this. I have to imagine whoever he swings in at is just going to let it through. Going to do something else as well, so going empty-handed. Throws out a morph creature. Yeah, I don't know my morph creatures very well, so not sure what that's likely to be in a Gruul deck. Alright, the 15-3 swings in at Chatterfang, so be tempted to gang up if I was Chatterfang, to be honest. Saves you some commander damage and takes his commander out, so that it's not a threat until a few turns down the line. Only threw a single one in the way, must have not realised it has trample, so he was trying to chump block. Takes 14 points of commander damage, goes down to 21. And the blocking creature died, so yeah, maybe he was playing around the Revel in Riches, because obviously the blocking creatures would have gone down. Yeah, I mean, you're between a rock and a hard place, really. Either lose to this or the commander. Draws to the Toski as well. So at the end step, the plant tokens come out and die immediately before we even see them, thanks to illness in the ranks. So it still gets the extra squirrel token, and of course the creatures don't die here, still gets the plant token and the squirrel token. Thanks to this +1/+1 buff, he gets to keep them. So scry 2 for Chatterfang, couple more treasure tokens because our plant tokens die immediately, and 3+ counters onto the Dread Sower. Alright, there is the Kenrith's transformation again, so Arasta, and we could Cascade into that, I suppose, or we could Cascade into the Kenrith's transformation from the Song of the Dryads and take out 2 commanders here. So let's go Forest first, or we could play the Forest off the top, couldn't we? This is where it's getting complicated. We'll be able to solve this on our turn here, so can play lands, creatures and enchantments off the top, which is everything on top of our library here, so yeah, it kind of doesn't matter what we do. We'll go Arasta, Kenrith's transformation, and put the Forest in hand. We might get into another land off the top that we can play. So play the command tower, and that will trigger landfall again. Oh, this only triggers at the end step. Alright, whatever, don't suppose it matters. Oh, when we triggered landfall, we trigger the Grismold as well, so Revel in Riches triggers again. Luckily we know what's on top of our library, so that slight error I made there doesn't really matter. Could have gone for Song of the Dryads onto the Grismold first before landfall, I suppose. Our opponent's taking his time passing priority for some reason, so Case of the Locked Hothouse I have great hopes for in this list. Been tempted to put it into other lists, but the fact that we want to play pretty much only creatures, lands and enchantments makes it absolutely perfect in this. Suppose it'd go in any Enchantress deck from now on, really. So hopefully, from next turn on, we get to make use of it straight away. Never solved one of these Case enchantments, so didn't realise that you have to do it from the end step onwards. Alright, so it's Song of the Dryads first of all, and we're going to actually draw into the Arasta with the Kenrith's transformation, so that works out quite well. We will go Grismold, getting enchanted with the Song of the Dryads, and that cascades of course because we're casting from our hand. Oh, we'll draw with the Cetizen Champion as well, so we'll actually draw into the Arasta either way. So Kenrith's transformation into exile, we'll throw that on the Chatterfang, and that is 2 commanders dealt with until they can remove the enchantments. And looks like this was sacrificed somehow. Do they have a sack outlet? Oh, Gift of Doom, not sure where that came from. I never noticed that. Must have been cast at some point, obviously. So it was on the Toski, and it sacrificed another creature. Oh, this is the morph creature. Alright, fair enough. That's why I missed it. As it's turned face up, you may attach it to another creature. So the Skull Clamp goes off. Draw 2 cards to the Grismold. This means that Song of the Dryads is going to fizzle, but it's already done its work, getting him to remove the commander. Would rather the Song of the Dryads had stuck because it's a bit more of a permanent solution, but as long as we're not losing next turn, that's fine. Pretty much has to take his entire turn off to get his commander out again next turn. Does have some excess mana from the treasure. So we draw twice, once with the Citizen Champion, once with the Khemrit Transformation. We know what the top card is here. So maybe we should hold on to Arasta after all, because our board's okay at this point. And there's a Wheel of Fortune. Our opponents are looking pretty poor on cards in hand, so don't necessarily want to play that. We'll still play a land even though it's going to give a Revel in Riches token, thanks to Illness in the Ranks. And here we can actually go for New Horizons onto the Forest, and then we'll still have mana for the Arasta if we want to do that. So we ramp ourselves ahead and get some more Cascades here. That takes us into a Weaver of Harmony, so that actually switches on... Oh no, it doesn't. I don't think the insects are going to be enchantment creatures, are they? No, they're just regular insects. Thought that might save our insect army there, but it doesn't. Citizen Champion sees an enchantment entering. We do have a hell of a lot of enchantments available to us, of course. And now there's a Xenagos we've just drawn into as well, so do we get that down as an indestructible blocker? Citizen Champion draws. Get a plus counter, can just go on the Wildsear arbitrarily. It does have trample. If we're going to double the power and toughness of it, that might make all the difference. And a Seal of Primordium against the Revel in Riches could come in handy. So yeah, let's go Seal of Primordium just in case. I'll regret doing it if I don't. Gonna end up missing out on low permanents here, low cost permanents, but draw into an Exploration, which is even more card draw because these are enchantments. Get an additional land every turn with this, so might be able to play it. Citizen Champion doing some great work for us. And there's a land. And there's the Anax again as well, so I think we hold on to the creatures as best we can. Can make another land here. Do we want to blow up the Revel in Riches or the Illness in the Ranks? I think I want to try and get chump blockers in for the potential overrun, but they're going to have trample if they overrun. Now let's go after Illness. It plays right into our opponent's hand. The Illness in the Ranks plays into our opponent's hand, I mean. It's keeping us from getting our chump blockers in. So make a fetch after that. So we could still go for the Arasta, speaking of chump blockers. I think I am just going to completely overextend here, because I want to deter Chatterfang from swinging in at us. Plus it can get us yet another Cascade to take us further away from our opponents on the board. A Shadow in the Warp. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, 2 damage to that player, so it'll be 2 damage to them, and maybe get a Spider token out of the deal as well. Noteworthy I tapped this down for Swamp Mana. With the Urborg, should probably have made an insect token. But we continue to draw, getting to a Verdurant Enchantress. There's another fetch for us, and this thing is now an 11-13. Let me spread the damage around a little bit. We'll go into the right. The more damage we spread around, the more likely it is that we can one-shot someone with Xenagos, because we'll be able to double up the power and toughness. Got trample against the indestructible. Oh damn, it's got Death Touch. Might have just thrown away the commander, stupidly. Yeah, forgot the aura gave Death Touch. So we're spending a turn replaying our commander next turn, potentially. But we get to trigger the case at the end of the turn, so looking at the top card of the library might give us an idea of what we want to do next turn. We can be planning that out in the meantime at least. It is a land on top for us. Still have the Mirri's Gale, so we'll be able to reorganise the top 3. Sphere of Safety we don't want to see. 2 damage to that player with the Shadow in the Warp. So the Chatterfang's dealt with. There is still an army of squirrels to look at though. Not going to have to take Forest Walk damage to that at least. Eldrazi Monument. There's the overrun type effect that I was worried about. We were never going to deal with that. Unless I'd held on to the Seal of Primordium, which, yeah, suppose we should have done. Could have played it cool with the not keeping the insect tokens in play, and could have blown this up instead. Our opponents feel safe getting down their permanents now, because the Seal of Primordium is not being held up. He is at 14 Griswold damage, so I might swing in over here instead. There is a Cryptolith Right, may also tap down some of his attackers, although he doesn't have any cards in hand, so not much point in that. Not whether you can use the Eldrazi Monument to sacrifice his commander and get it back into play. If he one-shots us here, then he'll get his Chatterfang back as well, though, because our aura will come with us. Yeah, so throwing away the Wildsear, not necessarily the best move for us, because what's that, 7 mana it swallows up next turn? Still got 5 mana available to us after that. 6 and 7 mana, actually, because we get 2 lands. Or actually, 3 lands, potentially. So could still do some stuff. So the Chatterfang was swinging in at us and now has pulled away, so hopefully means that he's not swinging in at us, but yeah, not so lucky. Looks like he's just turning everything in at us. I think we've only got 1 Reacher here. Haven't been lucky enough to get into any spider tokens. So apart from playing better with the Seal of Primordium, we kind of, made 2 errors there. Not only buffed up the squirrels, which I did consider, but we also made it so that an Anthem effect like this could come down. It was more Overrun and Crater Hoof and stuff like that I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking that the Seal of Primordium was going to save us from an Overrun effect. I think we go down here. I think they've got 32 damage on us. It's a shame that. It would have been good to get another turn there. Not particularly bothered about winning or losing, like I always say, but I think we were really starting to show off what you can do with Wildsear. There we go. Yeah, it was 32 points of damage they have on us. And Chatterfang back into play now. Amazing how often you don't see Eldrazi Monument. I don't tend to run it myself for whatever reason, but as long as you can establish the board beforehand, which is probably the reason that people don't play it, as long as you can establish the board beforehand, it is really, really good. Well, Tooth and Nail, if that's been entwined, then could they afford the entwine on Tooth and Nail? If that's been entwined, then it might just be a 1-card combo immediately here. Went after a Massacre Worm, which thanks to us blowing up the Illness in the ranks does not take out his Army of Squirrel tokens, although it wouldn't have done anyway. These are 4/4s now. What is this one? Primaris Eliminator. When it enters, choose one, destroy a creature. Creatures a player controls get -2/-2. Alright, I haven't seen this one before, so it's a mini Massacre Worm. And he's going to take a lot of damage to that. Does he go down to this? So pretty much every creature goes down, and Massacre Worm deals, I'm not sure how much damage, we'll soon find out. And it looks as though Revel in Riches, again, is going to need to be dealt with. If I was my opponent, I'd just leave all the treasure in play and force Onyxia to do something about it. Because with only 4 cards in hand next turn, it's not too likely. I think it's 11. So 22 points of damage should be enough to take care of Chatterfang. It's amazing how just one play that you make, or maybe a couple of plays, we lost the Wildsear, which was obviously wrong, and then didn't have chance to blow up the Eldrazi Monument like we maybe should have done. Maybe all those creatures would have gone in and taken out Griswold, which would have in turn not had him take out the Chatterfang player, a bunch of our creatures as well. Yeah, all off the back of Eldrazi Monument staying in play. Alright, but with 3 cards in hand, deciding to... He went for the Eternal Witness there, and now he's spending the mana, so he's going for Tooth and Nail again. So, casting and entwining it. Grabs himself a Wolverine Riders and a Zulaport Cutthroat. Skull Clamps the Eternal Witness, triggering the Zulaport Cutthroat for the first time. Doesn't feel as though he's going to be able to swing in through the Sphere of Safety, maybe. I'm not sure why he's refusing to win with the Revel in Riches, though. Kind of deserve to lose if you're not challenging your opponents to beat that Revel in Riches. Kaya's Ghost Form after that goes on to the Wolverine Riders, so going to be difficult to get rid of that thing now. Still with 3 cards in hand. Makes a token and gains a life with the Wolverine Riders at the beginning of every upkeep. Mirari's Wake does nothing other than make it more difficult to swing in through the Sphere of Safety. Allows into a zombie infestation as well, can only make 1 zombie with 2 cards in hand. So we'll be able to refill the hand with Skull Clamp now, thanks to having the Elf Warriors. Casts Helm of the Host, hoping Griswold doesn't just play with his food for a length of time here. He definitely had the win with that Revel in Riches, and now swinging in with Massacre Worm for 6 damage. So Onyxia has every chance to come back from this. We'll be able to get Devotion of 5 with white, which will animate both Heliod and the other Heliod if he wants to, give him some indestructibles as well as make the Sphere of Safety even better. Anyway, draws a card to the Toski, a Worldly Tutor from the Golgari player. And where is it? The reveal zone. Went after a poison tip archer, so definitely wants to finish it with aristocrats. And then skull clamping onto the untapped elf warrior as opposed to the tapped one. So we know that he's got the poison tip archer in hand now. Must have had an additional mana there somewhere as well. Takes out the other elf, and Zulaport Cutthroat continues to pepper away. And Nixia enters play then. And is not pointed at the other Heliod, it is Doomweight Giant. So plans on making a lot of enchantments during this turn. Does have double mana from the Mirari's Wake, of course. 3 cards in hand, so must have multiple enchantments, like I say. So down goes Zulaport Cutthroat with another 2 creatures, so triggers 3 times. Must have been a token and Toski, maybe. And then goes through to combat, so thought he had floating mana there, maybe not. Is he not going to cast any more enchantments? Alright, just wanted to deal with those. Could have blown this up as well, if he was able to play another enchantment. Skyshroud Claim makes some more untapped mana. Throwing Helm of the Host onto the Primaris Eliminator, so that can destroy a target creature. And we'll see what he's holding up the removal for. That's a Rootborn Defences, so populate and creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of the turn. So now every enchantment entering is -2/-2. And this has 2 toughness, so does counter the Helm of the Host. Tap down the creatures for mana on the way out and managed to get himself into a Sylvan Library. Undo Spirit Dancer. Whenever an enchantment enters, create a token copy of it. So they're going to get 2 enchantments down here, we assume. So the Heliod has now been animated. Looks as though Nixia is going to be able to come back from this one. Swings in with everything. It's going to be -4/-4 onto all of our opponent's stuff here. And that means that there's only going to be 1 creature in play, but they have Menace. So getting the 3 blind mice into play. And eventually, like we said previously, the 3 blind mice is going to be able to make copies of the Doomweight Giant. Thing is, the more creatures our opponent makes, the more he can get blown up in a board wipe, and then the Revel's back online again. If he even wants to win with Revel, which apparently he doesn't. So undo triggers upon the 4/4 3 blind mice entering play. And when the undo resolves, a 3 blind mice enters. So we see the 4 triggers from the Doomweight Giant, -4/-4. The Wolverine Rider's not going down there for some reason. I must be misunderstanding something. Yeah, I must have miscalculated something there, but decided not to block anyway, so has both the big creatures in play. Oh, of course, it was the Kaya's Ghost form I'm forgetting about, so the Wolverine Riders does stay in play after it goes down. Noteworthy that he has 8 mana held up here, and the tokens from this are enchantment creatures, so he can get more of those into the Doomweight Giants, but there's 7 cards in hand for the Griswold player. Another aristocrat effect in Bastion of Remembrance, got this player down to 19. Does have the Poison Tip Archer in hand still, unless I've missed something there as well. And there's the Poison Tip Archer as well, so now making a copy of the Massacre Worm with the Helm of the Host. We'll get rid of just the 2 mice, I think, but that's 4 damage. So looks as though that's what he's going for. So 4 damage here and then the aristocrat effect as well. So Massacre Worm into play again. Oh, and actually 2 Massacre Worms in play means it's 4 damage per creature that goes down, so yeah, actually 8 damage just from the mice. So yeah, there we go. Massacre Worm triggers 4 times, the Revel in Riches twice, and a couple of Poison Tip Archers as well. Bastion of Remembrance only triggers on your creatures dying. So our opponent's down to 19. Plumb the Forbidden being used as a sack outlet. Rarely see other players running this. Thought I was the only player on Magic Online that actually ran it, but there we go. Plumb the Forbidden going to draw even more, and in this case be used as a sack outlet, so it looks as though the aristocrat win is going to get it here. One thing you have to bear in mind when using Plumb the Forbidden as a sack outlet is that it and its life loss will resolve before the life gain from the aristocrat effects will. So you have to have enough life in order to use it in that form. But 2 mana, cause a bunch of triggers and refill your hand at instant speed. Very, very good card, Plumb the Forbidden, as I've said a million times. So taking him down to -2 with the Poison Tip Archer resolving. A fun game in the end, made some mistakes there as we saw, but got to see a little bit of what we want to do with the Wildsear list. Maybe need to add some more higher CMC cards so that we can get some potentially higher value cascades. The problem is you don't necessarily know what you're cascading into, but we saw with Mirri's Guile and cards like that you can kind of dictate it sometimes if you're lucky enough to get into these things. I'll probably run Wildsear again if anyone wants to see it, depending on how the likes and the views do on this video. I'll try and run it without as many mistakes next time, so hopefully we'll get a better showing with it and last a bit longer in the game. So leave it a thumbs up. You can consider donating on Patreon as well if you did enjoy the video. Big thank you to the patrons for their consistent support of the channel. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.